Hello, I'm Suzanne Anderson, and delighted that you're here with me today, this afternoon. I am a psychologist and a leadership consultant, executive coach, and the co-author of the recently published book, The Way of the Mysterial Woman, Upgrading How You Live, Love, and Lead. And I'm going to do a series of little videos over the next couple of weeks to introduce people through these Facebook Live events to the discoveries of our 15 years of research that are laid out in the book itself and in the online programs that I'm running now as well. And this very first session is dedicated to the mother, and we're going to just take a look at something I call the mother wound. But first of all, let me just back up a little bit to put this consideration of the mother wound inside a little larger context. And that context is that I have spent the last 15 years and more, actually, if I go back to the days when I was a leadership consultant, and certainly at that time also studying what it takes for women to really emerge in their fullness. But one of the main focus of my research through my university certificate women's leadership programs was to find a developmental pathway for women that could start to unlock the next level of our innate capacity. And I began to see in my role as a leadership consultant that women that were at senior levels in companies who I sort of assumed would be bringing some of the more feminine, as I understood them then, capacities into the workplace seemed to have a very hard time doing that. That in some way they'd actually taken on the paradigm of the masculine in themselves, and their ways of leading were more as sort of one of the boys than a unique expression of their own feminine wisdom and power. So through the years of the work that we were doing through our programs with hundreds of women, we began to see this path reveal itself. And we've called it in the book, and you can read more about it another time, the Mysterial Sequence. But the very first gate in this developmental path that starts to unlock the next level of our capacity is a gate I call the mother. The mother archetype is the primary archetype here. And why is that the mother archetype becomes so important in the developmental journey, and then why is it so important now for women to actually heal this mother wound? And it's interesting, you know, because recently, a couple of weeks ago, there was an article in Goop, which is an online magazine that Gwyneth Paltrow does, called The Mother Wound. I thought, oh, that's interesting. It's actually finding its way into the mainstream now. And I think this is because this first gate is so primary to do the healing work here, because it relates to the foundational way that we view ourselves. It relates to the relationship we have with the ground of our very being. So if we think about development, we all begin in the womb of the mother, of course. And the sense that we can also say with it, it's the most ancient and universally recognized of all the archetypes. And it, in its ideal form, it provides the healthy mother gives us this healthy sense of love and security, and all is well, and we will be provided for. We are contained and nourished. So we know that's true in the womb with the mother. And then also as young girls, once we're born, we actually have the same experience of being one with the mother. We don't differentiate in the way that little boys do. We see ourselves, those of us that identify as female gender, identify with the mother as being, we are the same as you. So this first, you could say, step in our development becomes the tricky one also, because what's laid down here is a fundamental sense of our own value and worth. And that arises both whatever our own innate disposition is that we come in with, we could say that's the nature, and then the way that we are mothered, we could say that's the nurture, but also the culture that we come from, the culture that we grow up in, the time that we grow up in, how women were viewed at that particular time, and also I believe the lineage itself, the way that your own lineage has the way the relationship to woman, to the feminine, has lived in your family. But we certainly know from our research, and I think historians would all agree with this pretty much, we've had 5,000 years of a worldview that's been predominantly held within a masculine mindset or masculine paradigm. Now, of course, prior to that, we had 50,000 years inside of matriarchy. So we're looking at a sweep of time that's not quite that long, but nonetheless, it has been all-encompassing. And sometimes we forget that this worldview of the what's now become hyper-masculine, has not been around forever. But inside of that worldview of the feminine being secondary to the masculine, women have also had the experience, and it's been passed down generation after generation, of feeling like second-class citizens, when the valuing of our own bodies, the valuing of our own rights, the valuing of our own freedoms was very much in question. And of course, still that some of this attitude exists still around the world in different cultures, as we know. So the healing then that I think needs to go on now, and the work that I'm doing, and I was actually spoken to in this article in the Goop magazine, has to do with the healing of the mother-daughter split. What I mean by that is the way that we have had passed down to us from our mothers and their mothers and their mothers, and all the way on back, a view of the feminine that I think is very outdated. And we have to update it. We have to actually update it by unhooking from the ways that we have been plugged into an unhealthy pattern of our own, the way we've seen our sufficiency, our own value. And so that when we are standing on the edge right now, you could say at the end of our own lineage, we're standing on the edge of evolution. We actually have the potential to transcend the worldview our mother could have and bring something very different now. We include all that went before, but we actually move beyond it. But we can't do that as long as we have still projected on our mothers the requirement for mothering, whether they're alive or no longer with us. So we have to find our own inner mother, and this is the healing of the mother wound, in order to cultivate that inner mother, to be able to take care of the parts of ourselves that got left behind. And then, because we know how to be self-loving, we can also direct this to the world. It must begin here. The care for the earth, the care for other beings in our lives, the care for animals, and the care for you could say the friendly universe itself, for being a part being a part of an unfolding universal story. This all happens here in the mother, where we are one with all. We have our heart open in love to ourselves, to others, and to the world. So this healthy sense of our own sufficiency really is where it all begins. And what we found in our research was in the unconscious of I would say most women, certainly I can say all the women that I've encountered. I haven't obviously done this research with everybody on the planet, but is embedded often in the unconscious, but sometimes also consciously present. A limiting belief that says, I am not enough. So just take a moment right now even to try that on for yourself. How does that belief resonate in you? I am not enough. And the ways in which we play that out when it's especially driving us unconsciously, the way we value our bodies, we see our bodies. We don't have our breasts aren't big enough, our waists aren't thin enough, our hair's not smooth enough, our skin isn't smooth enough, we're not tall enough, we're not sexy enough. All the ways that we have assessed our own sufficiency by some standard, most of which that standard has been set by a masculine view of beauty, or a masculine view of how you should be in order to give pleasure to men. Now, I am not enough. And then we have the body. Then we have the way in which we've seen our emotions, which have not been valued either. This is only fairly recently that even the consideration, the conversation about emotional intelligence has come back, or has come into the culture. You think of Descartes' original "I think, therefore I am," and the cultivation of the mind, of the rational and logical, excellent cultivation and development of our brains, but not the end game. And we see now the requirement for emotional intelligence to meet the challenges of the complex world that we're actually in. Well, that means knowing what we are feeling. I encounter many women in my work who don't know what they are feeling, don't know they have feelings, and don't know how to differentiate between one feeling and another. Or women in whom certain feelings have been not possible or forbidden, like anger, for example. You know, I was just reading the other day about the reality that in the United States, we are at the highest level ever of women on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. So a way in which what's going on for us emotionally is more than we can handle. And the way that we are handling it is to think that it's wrong and to medicate it, to try to get it to go away. Or we see the numbing with addictions of one kind or another. So there's something important here in the thawing of the emotional capacity that got overridden when the neocortex got developed, which is the new kid on the brain block. So we really here, when we come back again to I am not enough. I'm not enough in my body. I am not enough in the way I feel. My feelings are too much. They're overwhelming. They don't belong. And also, I'm not smart enough. My mind has to work like this and not that. And I don't think like the other men in my company, so there's something wrong with me. We see a dearth of women in science and engineering and math still, although there are certain initiatives trying to change that. It's been daunting to enter into those domains, to be put down by men who don't share the same mindset we do. But when the deep work is done in ourselves, and I would say this is deep work because we have to actually go into the body and do the decoding of this limiting belief of I am not enough. But when it is done, that work is done, then what arises is the liberating belief. And it rises through the body, not as just an idea in the mind, through the body, which is I am enough just as I am. I am enough just as I am. So try that on. See how it feels when you let that liberating belief resonate in you. I am enough just as I am. Now, with this belief in place, we begin to turn toward our embodied experience in a very different way. This is the healing of the mother wound, that we actually return home to ourselves. Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a very potent Buddhist teacher, says it this way, I think, very, very exquisitely. He says, go back and take care of yourself. Your body needs you. Your feelings need you. Your perceptions need you. Your suffering needs you to acknowledge it. Go home and be there for all these things. Go home and be there for all these things. Now, this is the place we begin, the healing of the mother wound. And I think it's our requirement as women to do this in ourselves, because if we cannot embrace ourselves more fully and our own suffering, we will not be able to do the same with others, to have the compassionate heart that turns toward others and the compassionate heart that turns toward all the suffering in the world. Or if we turn toward all the suffering in the world and the suffering of others without having compassion for ourselves, we will be overwhelmed. We will not be able to hold the global heart if we cannot hold our own heart. So I want to invite you just to a simple practice here that you can take away with you. It's a simple centering practice. There are many different forms of this, but this is one that you can do in any moment, and in any moment where you need to come back to yourself, when you have been activated, when you are reactive, and you have to come back to yourself. So I'm going to ask you to do this with me right now, and then you can have it in your body. So let's begin. If you feel comfortable, you can soften your eyes closed. And I find that's helpful because the sense of sight is so strong, but you can actually do this in a meeting without ever closing your eyes, by just feeling your feet on the ground. Now come back into the body. Actually feel the feet. Don't imagine them, but use the sensation to bring your attention out of your mind and down into the soles of your feet. And then also feel your body in the chair. So you're coming into sensation now. And the body and sensation brings you into the moment, into the now. Your body sensations exist in this moment. So let yourself come into the moment. And then find your breath in your body, and find it in the center of your body, down in what I call the hara, just below the belly button. Breath moving in the belly. So take a deep belly breath. We know so much now about how the constriction of breath affects our ability to think, respond. We actually let the breath move now in the body. Take a few deep breaths through the belly. And then gravity. Let gravity have you. That is to say, we spend so much time during the day fighting gravity, you could say. But in this moment, just feel yourself being held by the earth, by gravity. Let your muscles relax, the jaws, maybe between the shoulders, between the eyes. Deepening your connection to ground. And then feel yourself coming into alignment in a kind of three-dimensional space, length, width, and depth. So ask yourself, is the space in front of me the same as the space behind me? And just adjust. Often we're tilting too far forward in our day or in a moment, or maybe we're recoiling. So just in this moment, find yourself in center, in your the front and the back. And then find yourself in center to the left and the right. Ask yourself, is the space to the left of me the same as the space to the right of me? And find your center there. And then above you and below you, is the space above me equal to the space below me? Am I collapsed down, or am I way reaching up? So finding center there. Yeah. And now let's invoke equality. So ask yourself, This is a rhetorical question you ask to your body, really. What would it be like if I had a little more ease in my body right now? What would it be like if I had a little more ease in my body right now? And just let your body naturally respond. And then from center, let's just drop in the liberating belief of the mother. You can just say to yourself, I am enough just as I am. I am enough just as I am. Great. And you can soften your eyes back here if you close them. And I'll leave you with this sense then, hopefully you have in your body now, of what it feels like to be grounded in the healthy mother, at home, present to yourself, and then present to what is around you or who is around you. And thank you for joining me in this little video. Enjoy exploring the healthy mother.